Hello, everyone. This is Drew from Best of Us Investors working with Carrie. Carrie's on a road trip this week, so I wanted to share what our stock analysis team at the Discord has discussed this week. The company we're looking into is NVIDIA, so hope you all enjoy it. Let's get into it. NVIDIA is the graphics processing chip manufacturer, and I think most of their revenue comes from the sales of the graphics processing units. We call them GPUs. I was wondering what the GPU was. Why is it so valuable? And when people talk about computers or processors, they know CPUs. What I found was I'm not an expert in IT, but CPUs, the central processing unit, they're kind of like the brain of the computer, but they usually have about 4 to 8 cores. Like the cores is the brain of the computer where everything is processed, right? In the case of GPU, they have like hundreds of small cores. The CPU has more power than the GPU. But the benefit here is that the GPU can accomplish simple calculations at instance. Whereas in the case of the CPU, it handles more complicated calculation, but less at once. So GPU is much, much more faster and it provides a parallel processing capability. And I think that's why GPU is becoming so powerful because there's so much data out there that has to be processed instantly. And that's why I think GPU itself, its major goal was to improve the quality of graphics and video rendering. So they have to take a lot of points and render that at the same time as fast as possible for this to work. And when you talk about data center, what's data center? It's about artificial intelligence and high power computing. The GPU helps accelerate deep learning and machine learning. That's the core of artificial intelligence. So in the case of deep learning, you're analyzing the pattern of massive amount of data using the GPUs. And then if you talk about artificial intelligence, the way that they use GPUs and artificial intelligence is for task automation. They're at a point where the computer itself could write their own codes. And the CEO, Jensen Huang, what he said was the artificial intelligence can write codes much faster than humans. And they could even write codes that human cannot. But this is just the beginning. And this is all, possible because of the GPUs, in my opinion. I thought this was fascinating where they had two major acquisitions. So one in 2019, one in 2020. So the first one was Mellanox Technology, which was about 7 billion, I think. And what they do is they make ultra high speed internet and Infinity brand products. So what does that mean? They're allowing the data centers to link incredible amounts of GPU computing power at even higher speed. With the amount of data that's coming out, I think that's a must that they need. So that's a smart acquisition. The other acquisition, which a lot of people are talking about these days, is the UK-based company called ARM. NVIDIA is still in the process of the acquisition with ARM, and I think this is a big deal because ARM, the way that this company ARM works, is they don't actually build their own processors or chips. They license the ARM architecture of the processor core of the semiconductor chip. They're at the heart of like most smartphones and most smart devices worldwide, globally. One of the reasons that this acquisition is not going through is because of a lot of companies opposing this acquisition with the concern of monopoly. So Qualcomm, Google, Microsoft, they're actually opposing this. Even UK is opposing this acquisition. So I think they're still in the process. And we have to see how that works out. Other thing, the professional visualizations, I think they're in like almost every sector, which is important. And the professional visualization is where GPUs are designed for 3D modeling software and imaging analysis. We definitely see virtual reality and augmented reality. It's a trend, and they're the leader in visual computing. Definitely, they're going to be involved with VR, AR, which is a must. You need GPUs for cryptocurrency mining, right? They're in that sector.
Unfortunately, for all you 10Xers out there, this is not going to be a 10X video. Era of the 10X, in my opinion, has passed us a little bit. But I do think over the next 10 years, NVIDIA will become a $1 trillion company. My thoughts on NVIDIA is, to me, my investment in NVIDIA is purely based on artificial intelligence. I can't think of a better company to have in your portfolio to be invested in that space. Look at the areas they're in, from gaming to data centers to, even the genomic space. If you really research it, NVIDIA is heavily invested in that space and working closely with Oxford Nanopore, with Pac Biosystems. So, in a nutshell, that's really my thoughts on NVIDIA. When you look at a company already making billions and growing at 50%, to me, that's incredibly impressive. Now, again, I'm not thinking this is going to be a 10x, but I think a 20% return is very, very possible with a company like NVIDIA growing like they're growing, making money hand over fist like they're doing, and having such a competitive moat in the AI space with what they developed with CUDA.
Are you worried about the competition between AMD?
It's always a concern. What AMD has accomplished is very, very impressive. But no, I'm not worried about it. I think actually they're going to end up complementing each other. I think AMD's acquisition of Xilinx is brilliant. I actually wish that NVIDIA would have acquired them if they wanted to be acquired. But the founder and CEO of Xilinx has a connection and used to work at AMD, and maybe that was just the right fit for them. But I don't think it's necessarily going to infringe on NVIDIA's dominance in GPUs. I think it's going to enhance what AMD is able to do with its CPUs and having a bigger place in the 5G infrastructure, because that's really where I think Xilinx's technology brings advantages.
Some of the things that I just want to go through were the partnerships, where I think there's so much partnerships, and they partner with NIO to develop a new generation of autonomous EVs. They're in partnership with Mercedes-Benz, XPeng, Toyota, Volvo, Tesla. They were working with Tesla from 2016 to 2019. NVIDIA supplied Tesla with the autopilot AP2, I think it was. They were involved with Tesla, but Tesla came out that they were not going to use NVIDIA's products anymore, and they're going to come up with their own. So they had a partnership with Tesla. They have been working with the Amazon Web Service for over 10 years, and they're making new chips for mining for Ethereum. In the medical sector, they're partnered with the AI drug discovery company Schrödinger. They're in the genomic sequencing sector. They acquired Parabricks, the sequencing analysis software developer. If you look at the ownership, like 70% are institution and smart money. I think the hedge funds, these people have confidence in this company. I also think NVIDIA will be the dominant player in this space in so many sectors. And the thing is, the whole revolution, the fourth revolution, we say, I don't think it even has started. So definitely I see it as a company more than $1 trillion market cap in the future. The cons, I just have three. It was really hard to even find cons for me. One is they're in the crypto mining space. If you look at 2018, when the boom went up and then it crashed, right? Bitcoin crashed. The price went down like more than 50% because they were in that mining space. A lot of people bought NVIDIA GPUs for mining, and then it crashed. The demand went way down. So that's the concern that I had. The other thing is the acquisition with ARM. If it fails, we'll see how that turns out, because there's these companies trying to block this acquisition, or they're opposing it because of the monopoly. Seems like ARC was selling a lot of NVIDIA this month, so that was something I just wanted to kind of point out. But again, in my opinion, I have NVIDIA. I've been NVIDIA for a long time. I'm excited about the stock split. I'm not sure if I'm going to buy more at this price, but if there's a dip, I'm always keeping an eye on to add more NVIDIA in my portfolio. How about Tiago? What do you think about NVIDIA?
Although NVIDIA appears to be significantly overvalued, they have a high PE ratio, and I don't think that their past growth spurts are sustainable. I still think with a new industrial revolution being around the corner, could see NVIDIA becoming exceedingly more valuable as a leading innovator in the computing power industry. And so, with the emergence of these new technologies such as autonomous driving and AI, virtual reality, genomics, bigger and more cloud services, crypto mining, and more, the demand for this kind of computing power, which companies such as NVIDIA offer, is going to go through the roof. And as one of the leading innovators, I can see NVIDIA playing a sort of pick and shovel role in this scenario. I mean, try to imagine what you think the future will be like: self-driving cars and robots and cyborgs. But if you look at what's in the core of those fantasies, it's almost always computing power and computers. So if you are convinced that the future will kind of resemble that of which you just thought, it would be weird not to invest in companies such as NVIDIA or Intel. Do you think that in that reality, the leading company of processing power or computer will be under $1 trillion worth of market cap? Well, I don't think so. Me personally, I'm not going to buy at the moment. I don't think Nvidia is going to boom anytime soon. I could be wrong, but I'd rather just spend my money somewhere else. But that's short term. Long term, I do think it's a buy.
Noodle, how about you?
I really like their gaming service. Like they have the GeForce Now. It's pretty good. Many people use it because you can play a lot of games on low resolution ping, and it's really great for many gamers out there. That's why I know many people that don't have like the best PCs use GeForce Now. And another thing about their RTXs that they're developing, they're pretty solid. I mean, if you apply the RTX that they have in your PC and the games, they just get like a whole new setup, and they're like really enhanced once that RTX is installed. So I think it's pretty solid player in the gaming industry as well. It's not just in the gaming industry, it's working on a lot of things like augmented reality, virtual reality, self-driving cars, lots of things. I don't think it's gonna like boom anytime soon, but for long term, yeah, it's pretty good. Another thing is they're also doing things on like getting involved into like companies with like Neo, Xpeng, and all these companies like that. Another interesting thing I saw was that they're gonna make some chips to mine Ethereum. One con that I saw in the company was that global prices for like semiconductors, like they're not being manufactured as fast, and NVIDIA relies on like external sources to make their chips, and that it would hurt them because of this semiconductor shortage that's happening because they rely on external sources. And that's just one con I saw in the company.
I looked under the hood, and I'll just bring up some things that may or may not concern someone who's looking into buying NVIDIA this time. I mean, the good thing, again, like it makes earnings, it makes profits, which is, I know, out of favor. A lot of people want to, get into the growth stocks and, for the future, but profits are king for me. Drew, you mentioned the institutional ownership is up near 70%, which is a positive, for me. Short interest is like 1%. So, we don't have to worry about any of that. I don't like the fact that they're going to split the shares out, but that's just me personally. And it really has no bearing on the company itself for me. I think Noodle probably mentioned one thing I was always concerned with is, their supply chain and what's happening in the supply chain. They don't manufacture any of their silicon wafers. They don't own a wafer fabrication facility. They rely on Taiwan Semi and I think Samsung Electronics to manufacture their wafers. And what's going on in the chip area right now. It's it's tough. So I wonder how that will affect earnings coming up. They don't assemble, test, package their products. They use independent subcontractors, and they don't really have, according to them, long-term commitments or contracts with a lot of these suppliers. So that would concern me also. Does it concern you at all, the supply chain, James?
Short term, it does, but I would be excited if it went down, because it would allow me to add to the position at a lower valuation. I mean, for me, this is a 10-year, 20-year position. So I would think it would be a great thing if it went down for a short-term problem.
Do you foresee that it would earnings in this next year to that degree?
Definitely possible, yeah.
That's kind of what I'm thinking too. So just a cautionary. We talked a little bit about the inflation. If inflation continues to spike, that tends to have negative effect on earnings yields. So that has a tendency to maybe give you a buying point also. When we look at the numbers, a lot of these companies use non-GAAP reporting, and just as a definition of non-GAAP reporting, it's financial measures adjust the most directly comparable GAAP measures reported on an audited financial statement by excluding items the company believes are not good indicators of its performance. One such measure is non-GAAP earnings. The calculation of this measure is highly subjective and is not comparable across entities or industries. Non-GAAP earnings is not a required disclosure. Nor is it auto. Using non-GAAP earnings, earnings per share can be significantly overstated due to non-inclusion of share-based compensation. And, in the case of NVIDIA, it's kind of nice that they have it because they actually make money, as opposed to a Palantir or any other company like Skills that doesn't make any money, and they still provide their employees and their management with these big bonuses and shares. At least NVIDIA can justify doing it. If you look at their stock-based compensation, it's gone up quite a bit. 2019, it was 557 million. In 2020, it was 844 million. In 2021, it jumped up to 1.4 billion in stock-based compensation. Now, these aren't included in the consolidated statement of income and the non-GAAP reporting. So they're basically saying, this doesn't really count against us in expenses. I look at it a little bit differently. Also, when you look at what the compensation is out there that's not really reported, 3.17 billion of unearned stock-based compensation expense is to be recognized over the next 2.5 years. So that hasn't been given out yet, but within 2.5 years, 3.17 billion. And as of the 31st of January 2021, 1.2 billion of exercisable options with an average share price of $14.40 per share will be probably exercised within the next 1.7 years. So you're going to see, when people see the price at any time, that can be exercised. Now, those aren't really put on the books either. So I looked at just this year's reporting, and they showed about $7.02 per share on basic net income per share. 1.4 billion out there. If you take that out, that would get you down to about 702 a share to about 476 a share if you included that in. Always be aware of what's not on the books and what is on the books, because as Warren Buffett says, it's got to be reported somewhere and it's got to be taken out at some time. But still, the company's very profitable. If you look over a 4-year period from January 17th to January 21, 51 million shares were issued for staff and management of NVIDIA. Again, those shares, which we talked about, were excluded from the non-GAAP earnings. If you would take the stock-based compensation and shares and included them over the 4-year period, of earnings as reported, the earnings would be much lower and the PE would be a lot higher than it is if you included those in. So just be aware of that. Again, company's good, company makes money, but this is still sitting out there. And that's what I always look for. The last thing I'd talk about here is shareholder distributions. And this goes back to stock-based compensation too. This came from a Seeking Alpha article that I saw, and it said that 62% of reported earnings has been distributed out of equity to management staff in the form of share compensation. Meanwhile, only 8.8% of reported earnings have been distributed out of equity to shareholders via dividend. Okay, so since Q4 2018, the NVIDIA board has not increased the dividend payout for shareholders despite reporting record earnings and earnings growth of more than 20% for the last several years. The annual dividend is about 64 cents, which is about 0.11%. So it's interesting that during that time, they have increased the number of shares issued to management in options from shareholder equity, but they haven't rewarded the shareholders in the same manner. So that's just something to be out there. I mean, they don't have to give a dividend, but it's something I look at as far as a shareholder. If I were to buy NVIDIA, there are 2 ways that I can make my money. That's through the growth of the stock price or a dividend. So when I look at it, I think it's very expensive right now. So I'm not looking for the growth of the stock price. And then the dividend isn't really worth my time at 0.11%. As a company, again, I think right now it's overvalued for me. If it came back, I like the presentation that Drew and James put forth. They're into everything. They're not going to go away. There's just a few things that I look at that aren't deal breakers for me, but it would have to be at a lower price before I would consider it. I'm not really a single share, stock buyer. I do have some, but it's an interesting company.